As a young boy, he was curious. One drug led to the next until he became an addict and began losing himself. David Hernandez. These are results of faith.
My name is David, and I am 21 years old. I began to use drugs at the age of, I would say 14, 15. And it all started because I would feel alone. I would feel depressed. I had a family. It's not like I didn't have family. I had a family, brother, sister. My parents were together. But I would always feel like, they wouldn't listen to me or they were not there for me. And one of the main things was, my sister started consuming drugs. She would go out. She did all these things. Started, got curious, and I decided to try it. And at the beginning, I didn't like it, but I had, I wanted to feel like fit in. I wanted to fit in with them. So then, kept trying and consuming to a point where, I kind of got a little bit used to it and started liking it. And that's when I started smoking weed, with them. And little by little, hanging out with different friends, going with different, going to parties.
It started with marijuana when David was introduced to drugs. At first, he didn't like it, but later on, it became his necessity.
I started with marijuana, then it led to alcohol and prescription pills, which is something that I would break down the pills and snort them or consume them. Then after that, I got introduced to coke, and from there on, it was not a one-time thing. It became a habit, like an everyday time thing. And when I was smoking, I would not go to sleep if I didn't smoke. I would not wake up, I would not get out of my bed if I didn't smoke. I wouldn't eat if I didn't smoke. I would not go any places with friends if I didn't smoke. It was already a every 5-minute type of thing. So in order to, fulfill my addiction, I started selling drugs, started selling weed, and then lived from that, started selling the prescription pills. All my addictions, I started selling.
From an innocent young boy to a drug dealer, his life took a turn for the worse.
From there on, I just lost myself. I was lost. I didn't know what was the meaning of life. I didn't know what it was to feel, what it felt like being sober. It just slaved me. The drugs, the partying, all these things that the world gave me just slaved me. So I was just lost in general. I didn't know what I wanted to do in the future. I didn't know what I wanted to become. I didn't have a future. Because at that stage, I was so involved with drugs, involved with moving weight, that I had people, seeking me because I owed them money. And I got into shootouts, I got into different, problems with the police that I didn't see there was like any life for me. There was no way out. I was slave in all these things. I was slave of the addiction. I was slave of the prostitution. I was slave of money, because I made money my God. My priority was making money. I didn't care about if I sold drugs to a little kid, if I sold drugs to one of my friend's mom. So there was no sympathy in it. I was just did it for the money. That's when I started, getting to know different friends, falling into, all the depression, anxiety, drugs. It was very, very tough, It was that period of time that I was far from God. It was hell. It was like me living a life that was hell itself, because I wasn't happy. I still had a void inside of me. And that void I tried to fulfill it with everything. Women, cars, money, drugs, materialistic things, and none of that fulfilled it. So I was just like, well, how can I fulfill that?
He grew up in church and knew the only way out was for him to return to the presence of God.
One of the reasons that I started coming to church is because my parents were praying for me. I never knew that they were praying for me, but my mom and my dad were doing those chains of prayers at church, at the Universal Church. I started coming to church without them inviting me. Just the word that the men of God were speaking, it got to me. Started opening up my eyes, started, taking the decision of wanting to change, determining to change. And so then I started coming more to, the Universal Church, persevering, coming to the services, participating in the purposes, going Fridays to be delivered from, my depression, delivered from my addiction. And it wasn't from night to day. After I had forgiven the guy that I held a grudge for so long, I started, seeking the Holy Spirit, doing something different, seeking Him at 3 a.m, getting up at night, and praying for people, praying for my salvation. It was the beginning of the service. I just started, seeking. I didn't care about who was next to me. I would always sit in the front. I started sitting in the front because I didn't want nobody, to bother me. It was me and God. And that was one of the best things that, it is the best thing that ever happened in my life, of knowing that God is with you. And you're not alone. You're not fighting, these battles alone anymore. It was the best experience of my life. I received the Holy Spirit. Once I had received the Holy Spirit, inside of me, like, my vision started changing. My eyes, I would look at people and I wouldn't look at them physically. I would look at them spiritually. I was just like, man, you need what I have. Because what I have is, like, everybody needs to have it. Because once I received the Holy Spirit, I had a certainty of my salvation. So I was like, you know what? I want to go and save souls. I started evangelizing, started, helping out, at church. Here I am, serving God in the altar. I did a lot of things for the devil, and God seen, how I did, everything with so much determination. He's like, I don't like what you're doing, but I like your determination, and I want you to do the same thing for me. I want you to save, those souls that are lost. I want you to save them for me. Here I am, helping out the youths now, taking care of other souls and fighting for my salvation.